Hello again, everybody. This is the Catholic Esquire checking back in with you again to talk some more about traditional Catholicism and the traditional Latin Mass. Today's video, I'm going to talk about why women should wear veils at Mass. Typically chapel veils, but it can be any head covering. And the reason I want to talk about this is because in one of my last videos where I was talking about tips and tricks to bringing your friends and family to the Latin Mass for the first time, I had mentioned that when they come for the first time, they're going to see almost or a majority of the women there at the Latin Mass wearing some sort of head covering or a chapel veil. And it's important that you be able to understand why you will see that at the traditional Latin Mass. And so you can explain that to them. It will help relieve anxieties, concerns, or fears. And sadly, with something as wonderful and beautiful as wearing a veil, it's been politicized, and you may get some pushback from um, people who grew up perhaps in the 60s and 70s, especially, who for some reason think that wearing a head covering is demeaning. Far from the truth. It's the exact opposite, as we're going to see today. So I wanted to talk about that issue today. This video is not just for women and ladies. This is also for men. Men, you are the spiritual heads of your household. It is your ultimate job to instruct your household on the faith. So if you have a wife or you have daughters, you need to be able to understand why it's been a tradition of the Catholic Church, really, since the very beginning, that women would cover their heads at Mass or when they're before the Blessed Sacrament, at adoration, for example. You need to be able to explain that to them. And so this is for you as well. But at the end of the day, it really is a video for everybody, because it's a testament to what the Catholic Church truly believes about women, and should hopefully dispel all these myths and lies that are spread not just about Catholicism itself, but specifically about the traditional Catholicism. Because I have no doubt that many of these incorrect beliefs and errors run rampant throughout the new Mass world. Which is why if you go to a new Mass today, you hardly see any of the women there with any type of veil or head covering. It's my hope, and I'll address this at the end of the video, that ideally, even if you don't attend a traditional Latin Mass, the ladies should, and hopefully if you're listening to this, would be willing to wear some sort of chapel veil to a new Mass. You may stand out a little bit, and I don't think you should do it just to make political statements, but I think it would be a very beautiful thing to help spread the faith in that way. So let's talk about why women should be wearing veils at Mass. Well, the first and most important and best reason is simply because it's right there in Holy Scripture. And a lot of people don't realize that. But St. Paul, in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 11, a good portion of that chapter is actually dedicated to head coverings. And I'm just going to read a section from that for you right now. Paul says, "Any man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. But any woman who prays or prophesies with her head unveiled dishonors her head. It is the same as if her head were shaven. For if a woman will not veil herself, then she should cut off her hair. But if it is disgraceful for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her wear a veil." You see, St. Paul understood that a woman's hair, especially, is what makes so much of a woman's appearance to other people, and in many ways can make her seem or appear very beautiful to others. And that's part of the reason here, what we're going to see. But you may also be thinking to yourself, well, St. Paul, he lived 2,000 years ago. Everybody knows St. Paul, and they talk about this in the new the Novus Ordo world a lot. You know, they say they dismiss what Paul has to say about certain things, because especially the politically incorrect things, right? And so one of the things they say is, oh, Paul, he was only talking to people that lived at his time. That only applies to people who lived at the same time as Paul. That doesn't apply to us today. Oh, on the contrary, it has been Veiling at Mass for ladies has been part of the church's tradition since St. Paul. As a matter of fact, it was even in the Code of Canon Law, including the most recent code before the current one, the Canon Law Code of 1917, specifically provided that women should wear veils at Mass. That canon is 1262.2 if you want to look it up and don't believe me. Now, it is true the current Code of Canon Law from 1983 does not mention that provision that used to be there, but it didn't repeal it either. It just didn't carry over into the 1983 code. So, however you want to look at it, I think is very clear that the church has always taught from the very beginning that women wearing veiling at Mass is appropriate and should be encouraged and should be done. But we really can't just rely on what's in Scripture and in canon law. We also need to have a good reason for our faith here, a good reason and understanding of why this might be the case. And I mentioned with Paul that the hair for the ladies is very important, and it's really in some ways it's like the glory of the woman, right? And by veiling, it's really first and foremost it's a sign of humility, because you're covering that part of yourself that gives you glory as a lady, as a woman, and you're doing it in the presence of God, so you can give that glory to Him rightfully. The best example of this is Blessed Virgin Mary. Have you seen a picture, a depiction of the Blessed Virgin Mary without a veil or some sort of head covering on? No, because she is the perfect example of humility, and veiling demonstrates that or exemplifies that. So if it's good enough for the Blessed Virgin Mary, I think it would be good enough for your wives and your daughters, or for you if you're listening to this and you're a lady. It's a beautiful thing. It's a sign of humility. But what is it also? It's also a sign of sacredness. If you think about it, and you go to a Mass, there are other items that are veiled in the church. There's a chalice. There is a ciborium, the tabernacle. These are veiled items. Why? Because they're sacred items. They're holy items. And veiling it is a sign of sacredness, because you're separating it from the rest of the world. And believe it or not, ladies, you are very sacred just by your very nature of being a woman. And that's because it's in you, in your body, that life is created. And it's not just life, but a soul is infused into that new life right there in your womb. That is in itself is a miracle of God, and it's taking place right there in your womb at the time a new life is conceived. In a way, you are a holy vessel where God is working miracles. And that is why, another reason why, veiling is a sign, an important sign. It's an important sign of holiness, of sacredness of a woman that men simply don't have. Now, ladies, I know what you're thinking. I know some of you out there are thinking this. You are saying, I'm past childbearing years, or I have a medical condition that doesn't allow me to have children. Does that make me less than a woman? Does that make me not holy? No. No. See, it has not. Your actual ability in any particular time to bear children has nothing to do with this. What it has to do is with the nature and the essence of a woman. Right? If you think about it, even a woman who's in childbearing years isn't always fertile, right? In fact, she's only fertile only a couple times, a few days out of the month. It's not the ability to have a child at any particular time that matters. It simply goes back to the nature and essence of a woman that matters. And all women share that. Men do not. And so in that sense, women are very much separated and different from men. And it's always in Catholic tradition, this has been recognized and honored. And it's something we should be very proud of and not shy away from at all. And this leads me to the final point I wanted to make today. If you do attend a new Mass, you don't have access to a traditional Latin Mass, which I encourage you to do because I think it's very important for your faith and your growth that I've talked about in other videos. If you do go to a new Mass for whatever reason, I would encourage you ladies to wear a veil. Now, you may be the only one there with it on. You may get some stares. You may even have people talk down to you. I've seen it, not necessarily with veiling, but with other things. Kneeling at communion, for example, you will hear some snide comments or some comments along the lines of, "Oh, you think you're better than everybody else?" See, that's modernism, my friends. That's modernism. That's everybody's equal, equal, equal. No, not everybody's equal. We all have different roles to play. Men have roles and women have roles. They're each important, but they're different. This isn't a hard concept. But because of the heresy of modernism, it's infected all of the Catholic Church, especially at these new masses. That notion of differentiation of roles is all broken down. And so, ladies, I encourage you, if you do attend a Latin Mass, it does take some courage, but I know you can do it. My wife has done it when we used to go to new Mass. You can do it. It's a beautiful sign. And if people ask you questions, you do need to explain to them why you veil. Talk about how it's far from being overly holy or showing, being prideful. It's the exact opposite. It's a sign of humility in front of God. Because remember, God is there. God's there in the tabernacle. And it's a sign of sacredness and holiness because it's inside of you where life is made and where the soul is infused into life. You truly are a sacred vessel. So in that sense, you should be proud. And don't be afraid to talk about it. I hope this video was helpful. Please like and share this video if you think it may resonate with others. I appreciate your time. Have a great day.